Thank you for being here, Alva. Good to be chatting with you. How are you?
I'm great, as I said. Yeah.
Good.
Very well.
Beautiful. I want us to drop straight into your upcoming talk on what is yoga. Can you just drop straight into what is yoga, Alva?
Oh, well, I think that what the talk is supposed to highlight, the summary of it is that we are too firm with our ideas maybe about what it is. Mm-hmm. So what is yoga is just meant to be an open-ended question and a discovery. Basically I've been doing a lot of research in the past couple of months, just been really graced with a lot of cool information, more from a scholarly and academic point of view. So not really practitioners, but just what is the history of the philosophy of India? What is the history of the philosophy of yoga? And it's being a practitioner, it's really provided a lot of insight, into the context in which a lot of the yoga that we now know it, how it's formed. Mm. And although there's been a lot of insights there, it's shown me that not to actually still, even though so much new information has come in and so many insights have come, it's still not to firmly say what yoga is. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah, how would you describe it? How would you describe it?
The indescribable, for one, but then to try to describe it, a deep state of attention, a deep feeling of wholeness and balance, and a mystical experience, really, of being who we truly are, is what I feel is yoga, which is indescribable. We try to describe it, we read about it, we contemplate it, but the predicament is that the mind can't quite get it.
Yeah.
Because as soon as we think about it, it instantly, we lose it.
We
lose it. I remember Richard Freeman speaking about the meaning of yoga and the meaning of life, these mystical questions we come into being similar to like trying to hold onto a really slippery avocado pit, and you like grab it too hard and you're trying to get it and you're trying to hold it and it just pops out. So similar contemplation of what is yoga? Who am I? What is the meaning of life? These reoccurring questions that seekers have. Yeah, indescribable, but I think a feeling of being deeply present, of being deeply connected with everything. I mean, it's so radical, really. I think it's so radically ultimate and all-encompassing, yet very grounded as well.
Yeah.
Very complete.
Yeah, and I think, so what you've, alluded to is, people, according to this kind of scholarly perspective, there's two different ways of thinking about yoga, and the way that you've described it is yoga as the goal. Even though we don't like to use those words, but yoga is the goal. But the other way of looking at yoga is yoga as the method. So what yoga as a means, and then there it's like, well, this is my yoga. This is what yoga is. That's what yoga is. Yoga as the goal, indescribable, but very much something that is at least tangible in an experience, But yoga as the method, that's what I want to kind of debunk.
Yeah.
Like, what is this method of yoga that we all are drawing claim to, and saying that there's a traditional yoga? And so the reason I'm so, hot and passionate about it is because I'm just the biggest culprit for so many years, laying claim to traditional yoga and having a look at what actually, what critical textual studies are saying. It's like, oh, wow, it's nothing that we're talking about. And it's not that we've all got it wrong. It's actually that no one ever looked to see what is the tradition of yoga. So I'm really excited for this conversation to open up more in yoga communities rather than just the scholarly community,
Right.
So it's not just happening in academia circles, totally separate from the practitioners who are kind of, making claims about what the scholarly point of view is,
Right. Well, good on you for jumping into that conversation and taking lead with that conversation. Because I think we generally in the community have romanticized the past and the traditional, quote unquote, aspect of yoga. And I think that gets done in most spiritual practices, a kind of romanticizing of the good old days kind of thing, the old tribal days, the old simple times. But yeah, I feel you on that. I've fallen victim to as well perceiving or maybe misperceiving that modern yoga is a dilution of yoga. And I still do think there are a lot of dilutions of the full potency of yoga in its like mass popularization and the kind of glorification. And it has become a very glamorized thing, which potentially has diluted aspects of it. But I think I really hear you on that point, which I'd love for you to pick apart even a bit more now. But in my own observation, it seems like a polarity right now of people really evolving into deep inquiries into what yoga truly is, and also that other kind of social media frenzy and a real sexy glorification of yoga. But that seems to be going on with everything. And yoga is just one of those things, which is just a huge... We're exposed to it all. It's all right in front of us. So it depends what we're paying attention to, I guess, doesn't it?
And is it right or is it wrong that sexy yoga or whatever this kind of superficial, branches of yoga and stuff or images of yoga, is it... Maybe it's what's actually drawing people to spirituality and then they dive a little bit deeper. But definitely one of the kind of bones I have to pick is around people who are going deeper into yoga, who are interested in spirituality, and who are just getting caught right at the entrance of the depth of what we can find in our practice and in ourselves, which is what I did, which is finding a really, really harmonious dogmatic belief system and school that are telling you this is the way it is, and you just buy straight into it and you just stop right there at the door, and you're only then going horizontally, into that one system, and everything else is shut out. And you do go deep and you do get the max benefits of that one dogmatic system, but then, you got to take that one step deeper right out of it, look back and be like, oh, okay, maybe there's another way and other people aren't wrong. It's
such an interesting trait of whether we call it our ego or our divided self, to divide everything, whether it's a sports club or a particular yoga method or our race, or it can extend to nearly anything, to food, our choices of food, to even cars, anything. And it's a shame, but it's also just clear as day as to how it has infiltrated every religion, every spiritual practice, and yoga included, that tendency to want to belong to a club.
To separate.
And then to separate.
It's the inherent quality of separation is to make those things. But I had this, and I'm really happy to have this discussion and to continue it on Sunday, because I've just been having this really rigorous discussion, but only with myself.
Yeah.
And just going full into conspiracy mode. And I'd really started a month or so ago. I was in silent retreat, and I just went full into yoga conspiracy and how actually yoga, and especially traditional yoga, and how it's developed in its formation and its past, actually is a very suppressive force, that actually yoga inherently takes advantage of our nature and separation, to buy into and give our power away to teachings, teachers, systems, and ideas. And that, actually that's the foundation of yoga. It's always been guru system based. And if you actually look, I'll recommend this book. I don't know if you've seen it, Roots of Yoga by James Mallinson. Yeah,
I have. I think I've read it once, but I want to revisit it.
Yeah. There's just no question. It's basically just looking at textual sources. And when you have a look at it, they're all the textual sources of yoga are 100% contradicting each other and trying to step on the other one. In the end, you see that none of them even make sense. That it's all imagination.
Right.
It's this many chakras, that system's wrong. Never think Muladhara's there. Always ejaculate, never clean your tongue, always clean your tongue, never clean your anus, always clean your anus. Suck liquid through your penis or suck liquid through your anus and eject it through your penis, things that are anatomically, we know are impossible. And then the texts are glorified with, Shiva spoke it and he spoke it to Parvati and, this is what will let you shine with 1,000,000 suns. And now looking at it from the outside, it's like, obviously this is spanning over hundreds of years, these debates. And then it's also debating with Buddhism and Jainism and they're all actually being born right out of the exact same basin. These different philosophical, it's just philosophy. Don't get me wrong. Every single time I come back to it, I'm like, I love yoga and this is what I'll teach for the rest,
Yeah.
or not for the rest of my life. But this is what I'm most passionate about. And I still adore it. But I have to really check into myself. Has there been a transformation? And in what I share with, our community, is there a transformation? And where is there not? Where is it just a whole bunch of weird, just a suppressive flow that's taking away people's power?
Right.
And it's always had this, like you said, this romanticism. It's not modern yoga. It's actually embedded in yoga. Modern yoga is one of the more harmonious expressions of what yoga is in its history and in its development, because now it's actually got a bit of science behind it, that people are really questioning, that there is a lot of criticism to the woo-woo yoga and where that meets, where science and, real evaluation and critical study meets the romanticism and not giving your power away, but that devotion and that full, I'm going to do it. I'm going to see, no matter what, I'm going to take it to its end. And then you find out, the end was actually not really that good. But where those two cross, I think, is actually where there's a potency in our yoga practice and spiritual practice today. But yeah, I definitely went, and I'm still in that conspiracy mode, I even went all the way back to, we're always like, the yogis say this and the Buddha said it and Jesus said it. So trying to get again that validity that it's cross-cultural, but they were actually born in the exact same place. I want to know what China was doing. I want to know what some cultures were doing that weren't touched by yoga. This idea that Jesus went to India and got some of his powers there, and that's just obviously, I don't know what any legitimate research is for that, but it's the whole worldview. It's based on sin. It's based on a teacher. It's the 10 Commandments. It's the 8 noble the eightfold path. It's the yamas and niyamas, whether it's 8, 10, 13, 15, 4. It's all this same kind of idea that we're sinners. There's an inherent problem with us, and that yoga or our system is the only one that is going to, and not only that, but the other systems are faulty and maybe demonic, and it's just this fight for power eventually. So to see the political context that these beautiful spiritual systems were born out of really provides insight into, oh shit, this is just a system of power. And then me and my friend were going to get a shirt that says yoga is banks. Like, it's institutionalized, right?
Totally.
Into the economical system of the time. They're the Rajanikas, and, they're, influencing the ruling class. And of course, the Buddha and all of these, beautiful spiritualities, they came out of the ruling class, so it's all of these interesting power plays. It's like, well, hold on. What practice do we actually enjoy? As a teacher, and then only sharing that essential part of the practice is the only thing that's offering me some sanity in the midst of all of this.
Yeah. It's often said there's a fine line between illumination and insanity, and it really does feel like that when you cut down to the deepest truth and take inquiry to its absolute depths. It can reveal a lot of the insanity of everything of form, of prakriti, and to get to that depth of absolute truth and then to bring it into inquiry and really investigate is awesome. And I'm loving seeing you doing that and bringing it into the collective conversation. It's a really valuable conversation that I haven't seen done that much. Often the conversation as to what is yoga, I think, is pretty surface level, and you're looking at a very broad, integral picture, which is great and very refreshing. So good on you. Speaking of the guru tradition and whatnot, what is your viewpoint currently on the value of having like a primary teacher, like a go-to?
Yeah.
Whether it's an embodied person or a disembodied person.
Yeah, I think actually I'd make quite a big distinction thinking about it right now. I mean, we can nut it out about an embodied teacher and a non-embodied teacher. I think it's got to be an embodied teacher, you know, pulling on something, what you think they said, what you're interpreting it as. You need someone to, it's such a fine course correction that so you don't want to be interpreting from your lens what a deceased teacher, unless you're saying like maybe an astral teacher that comes to offer you teaching.
I'm talking from the guru transmission. Like Ramana is one of your go-tos in terms of guru transmission, I've observed. So that, and then a go-to actual teacher. It feels like there's a difference between like the guru energy and a teacher.
Yeah, sure. But really, really interesting kind of contemplations I've been having around the teacher. I think a teacher is 100% necessary. I don't know if I'll ever waver with that, because you have to think about, well, what are we talking about a teacher? Well, let's first think about what we're trying to learn. So what are you trying to learn? If you're trying to learn something that you don't, that doesn't have a system behind it, then you don't need a teacher. But if you're trying to learn the mastery of anything, then you don't need a teacher, but it's just going to it's going to be a lot quicker. And it's just such a scary arena, this teacher arena. And anyone can be a teacher again. So it's like, okay, well, we can get little bits and stuff from here and there. But what you asked is that one primary teacher. And I think, I think we need one primary teacher. And really interestingly, I've had this beautiful experience happen to me where 8 years ago or so, I met my first spiritual teacher. So he was a Buddhist teacher and he's my uncle. So I'd met him before. And it just totally blasted me. I'd even been to his Buddhist talk maybe 2 years before when I was 18. Nothing resonated. I was like, I have no idea what you're talking about. I was out of there, couldn't even sit through it. Then 3 years later, he came back to Sydney and I listened to him speak again and it just blew my mind. And I started following him, gave everything up, was like, tell me where to go, and was going on retreat with him. And he just came here. So he is leaving on Tuesday. So I haven't seen him in 7 years. After that, he sent me to Agama. And to sit in his presence again and to hear the same, teachings again, and to just evaluate, why isn't he my teacher now? What happened? What changed? Is there a value in having that one teacher? And, it's very clear to me that two totally valid spiritual paths can completely contradict each other. And the way that he, explains his systems and his teachings and his beliefs and his prescriptions for practice and for life actually quite contradicts what I believe now in terms of having more of an Advaita and also a tantric kind of mostly consciousness is everything kind of worldview and more of a monistic worldview. And it contradicts what and I was like, okay, well, that's where I kind of broke away and where I learned from elsewhere. But kind of reflecting on the value of having that full devotion to that one path and then going to another path and having full devotion there, 100%. And how dogmatic I was when I was with Bharam, and how dogmatic I was when I was with Agama, and how dogmatic I was when I was with Hridaya. And having just fully given myself and how that actually skyrocketed me. Although it also traumatized a lot of my relationships and traumatized me in many ways, and I had to unlearn so many things and develop on my own. Having that 100% faith and devotion to that one guru and one system, even though I now see them to be totally flawed in terms of what I, am approaching now, I have to actually look at myself and what I've experienced and how I experience my life now, and to be like, actually, it was useful. It was super useful, and I think it's what has set me apart from everyone that I'm teaching now, and a lot of my colleagues even on the path, that there was just too much of the, picking and choosing of all of the information we have access to without fully going into one thing and knowing it deeply. You were saying it in your book launch about digging many holes, looking for water, some analogy along that line, and it's absolutely true. You got to go to the end. You got to go to the end to know why it's wrong. You got to go right to the end of your most, intuitive and fulfilling path to know why it's not the truth. Otherwise, everything is just a little bit the truth, a little bit wrong, and it's not, there's no depth. Yeah,
well put. Really exquisitely put. Because every method is a trap. Every method is a trap. No matter how sophisticated and incredible that method, if we grip onto it and that's the only method, it's a total trap. So every effective method I've come across has admitted that. Has admitted practice deeply, like master the method, then let the method dissolve, like let it go. And that to me feels like an effective method. As soon as the languaging of this is the method and no other method works, and you got to keep coming back. That's the dogma that just it's so entrapping.
And that's where I think that yoga is this suppressive current, because it doesn't provide the context and the perspective that I see some modern teachers doing today, but it is a mature perspective that, no way, you're not going to find the absolute and the relative in no form of the relative. Every single thing I'm saying and teaching you is relative. Wake up from that and also do these practices, do something, get off your ass and do it. But, one of my favorite teachers is Adyashanti, because of it is a very mature perspective saying, nothing I'm saying is true. Wake up. Stop believing everything I say, make some, expand your consciousness. But until you get to that point, from what I'm kind of understanding, evaluating my own path, there was a lot of limitations. I wouldn't have been able to understand and receive and benefit from that kind of advice until I had actually pushed really hard, being really dogmatic in a lot of ways that really pulled me out of my existing consciousness at the time, which maybe was very superficial or all about desires or addictions and stuff. So something to pull me all the way out of that, and then to somehow find, of course, the balance in the middle.
The middle.
The middle.
The middle. Now, you regularly take Vipassana retreat, don't you?
I don't take Vipassana retreat.
Oh no, just silent retreat.
Yeah. So I've done Vipassana and I love it. But that's only because I love meditation. Okay. I don't necessarily think that Vipassana offers everything you need, and is accessible. It's just provides a really good space. I think one of the best things it provides is the achievement of finishing a Vipassana. Okay. That's one of the best things, And of course, just the benefits of being unplugged for 10 days. But I think there's a lot of instruction and yoga and permissiveness and balance and middle way that makes missing from Vipassana, that makes it really accessible. And you don't get 10 days to just take off, to really make it the most of that time in your way. So the silent retreats that I run are always new. It's a new one every single time. Vipassana's off the cassette tape, from 15 years ago must be now that Goenka recorded them, and the teacher's gone, and it's like every silent retreat I do, it's brand new, and you can't even plan it. It's the group, it's that day. It's like this huge reality that's unfolding inside of me and the group that's swirling and being shared. And yeah, it's my favorite thing in the entire world. So yeah, it's definitely a regular thing. It's my priority. I wouldn't give it up for anything.
Running a studio and teaching a lot is teaching a bit, not so much these days.
Well, we don't have that many classes on the schedule, so I've always taught about 3 classes a week.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah.
That's good. But self-practice, is that a priority for you?
No, it's a luxury.
Yeah.
Yeah, self-practice is a luxury. Yeah. It's a priority in my heart. Not to, make excuses about that, but still, I think, like this morning I had like 2 hours to and that's a luxury.
Oh, totally.
Yeah, like what kind of, ecstasy am I living in to be able to spend my life like that? And I haven't always been able to. And sometimes I'll be running a 1-month intensive where, it's in those cases, then it is actually a priority. You have to kind of schedule it in. And yeah, so I think you were kind of alluding to, like getting to teach at the studio. I do get to practice. And I think what I've always aimed for in my life, ever since opening the studio, when my life changed and it wasn't no longer just hours of self-practice every single day, is that I really wanted to make sure that it's all about planning and organizing, making sure your schedule is airtight the night before, so that when you get little breaks, and self-practice is sitting on a couch, like, staring at the tree, drinking a cup of tea, and just mindfulness, which has never been my practice before. It's always been like, 5 hours doing this, 8 hours a day doing that, all kinds of really technology-based practices, where just that mindfulness is definitely where my practice is at the moment. But I love that, technology-based practice, weird pranayamas and kumbhakas and stuff. And,
Yeah.
I love that. And that for me is a luxury, to get to play with those things.
Back to Adyashanti, he's one of my go-to teachers as well. Have you heard the conversation between him and Ken Wilber? They have like
I'd love that,
audio course that goes for at least a few hours. It's been a while since I've listened to that, but that's a regular revisit to me. I've listened to the whole thing at least 5 or 6 times. It's really beautiful because they've both pushed Zen kind of to the edge, and that the kind of boundaries of Zen to the edge, and then have kind of come out the other side with so much humility and so much perspective and so much integration. It's a beautiful conversation. You should check it out. Ken Wilber. Just Google Ken Wilber and Adyashanti conversation. I think there's another one where Tammy Simons is interviewing them both, and she's very skillful at picking it apart. Yeah, incredible. Yeah, check it out.
We'll definitely love them both.
And the art of dying. I'm very curious about that, and that feels like another really valuable offering in the community. As you'd be well aware of, in our culture, there's such fear and denial about the death process. I mean, in our kind of clean, sanitized culture in Perth in particular, we can almost delude the situation that death isn't even around. It isn't even a part of our reality. It can really feel like that. Yet the contrast of when I go to India and Varanasi and so forth, where death is just left, right, and the center, it feels like our attempt to put death behind walls and behind closed curtains, and even the mourning process behind death. We typically at a funeral, we wear dark glasses and hide the tears and hide the mourning process and the whole grieving process. So I just want you to speak a little bit about this art of dying, which feels really valuable for our culture. Yeah,
it changed my life. So like I was telling you, it's not me that facilitates it, but we have a guest teacher who comes. I don't know how other people feel. I'd invite your listeners to consider how they feel about death. And for me, it was just the scariest thing in the world, not just because of the death and the unknown, but bringing, right into my face the harsh reality that I don't know what the fuck is going on, I have no idea what's going on in life, and I have no idea what's going to happen in death, and I'm scared, and all of the stigma around the dying process and aging, and yeah, it was just very, very scary for me. And the first time that I did Art of Dying, it was at Agama, and I'd always heard, it's like the best course here, you got to do it and everything. And I was just doing everything. So I took it, and it was a huge game changer. So basically explaining a little bit about how one culture who studied the death process, how they feel about it. So the Tibetans, obviously, where death was common over there, and also the lamas were very much connected to the astral world, going over, coming back, telling what's on the other side, eliminating a little bit of that unknown territory there. So how the Tibetans work with the dying process, and the other part of the workshop is also explaining it more from a Western psychological point of view as well. And it just kind of bridged the gap for me. And what you receive in the Art of Dying workshop is a whole system, like a death kit, basically, about what you do when your loved ones die, and why it's one of the most greatest opportunities in life and in death and in our human experience to experience liberation. Of course it is. If liberation is from your body-mind attachment, well, then that's what that is. That's what death is. And just a couple of different perspectives that very quickly, because of the intensive, part of the workshop being 2 days full on, very quickly just kind of shifted my idea and just right away brought clarity, right away just lifted that veil that has, so lightly being placed, even though it seems like death is so rooted as being bad, it was really actually quite lightly. It made a lot of sense in a spiritual context. As a spiritual practitioner, as a practitioner of meditation, just clicked right away that, oh my God, this is a beautiful thing. Death is amazing. And it's just this weird belief system. It's just another belief system like any other one. And it dissolved very quickly for me. I remember writing an email right away to everyone back home. I was like, guys, my family and Jared, I think even Mason, I was like, don't worry about your death. Don't worry about it. I'll talk to you when I get home. I've got it covered. I'm going to, have a death kit. I'll be there with you. And there's been a couple of people that have died since I've been doing this kind of work. And it just makes so much sense. It's like, it's just another form of meditation. And I do question if it's also because of my meditation practice that I took so quickly to the relief, but I know it's been, transformative for a lot of other people as well who maybe didn't have such a deep meditation practice. But for me, it's my most exciting thing. Like, I can't wait to die. I just can't wait. It's what I want every single time. It's what I want right now. I just want to be free. I just always in meditation, all I'm wanting is to be free in my life. My highest priority is freedom. So death is just, I think we're also there's all this idea about heaven and hell and like hell, eternal damnation. And you're kind of scared about death. That might be the thing that takes you over into eternal damnation. So yeah, I was a little bit scared even after Art of Dying. I was like, maybe I haven't done enough practice, to be able to do the certain things that you need when you die. But I saw very quickly, I'm like, no, actually, you just need to think Shiva and off you go.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think necessarily in spiritual circles and communities, people are aware that there's a faulty understanding, a limiting belief, a scary kind of idea about death, and people are open to thinking about it in a different way.
Yeah, it's so thick in our culture. I mean, even I think the founder of the hospice system being really great in a lot of ways, but the kind of slogan that the founder termed was "Death is an outrage." So even though they're supporting people to die, death is an outrage. So it's like a failure. It's like a failure. And that's been entrained in our culture, that you got to do everything possible to keep that person alive, even if they are suffering like crazy, you know, and there's not many parts in the world where people can actually make the choice to die consciously. The euthanasia conversation, you know? So, it feels like a vital part of any actual spiritual practice to contemplate our impermanence and to die before we die again and again, and to get in touch with the silence, the eternal, which is ultimate preparation to die, because we're not so attached to form and our personality and our ego and stuff. And it feels like a vital practice to love life fully, to love death fully.
Yep.
Feels really like to love life fully.
And to let people go.
Let people go.
It's just such a sign of a deep attachment, you know? So, I mean, of course, you know, I live my life with so many attachments, but, you know, as soon as you just become conscious, like, oh, wait, no, I'm not attached to that person. They can go, you know? So, of course, there's going to be grief there.
It's so fucking intense, though. I thought I had non-attachment down until I had kids. Now, like, it's so tricky. Oh, just being so in love with that little person we created. That's up the game big time, the non-attachment thing. Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah. And I think about it, you know, I say all the time, you know, obviously we have our dog Honey, who's just like so sweet, and I would compare it to a child, even though I shouldn't. But, and for sure, I'm just like, I'm so attached to Honey. I'm just like, I just love her. Yeah. And then, you know, but in that moment of spiritual clarity, it's like, it's there. It's like, yes, I can let you go. And then, of course, the next moment, it's right back in. You habitually, our bodies, of course, your body is attached to your child, your wife, your home. Your body is, but there's a part of you that's not your body. And that's a spiritual clarity that might be, you know, informing your thoughts as well. So, of course, I don't think you'll ever not be super attached to your children. I think it's insanity, right?
Yeah, I think so. I think
it's being disembodied, or
it seems like, again, the middle way, the madhya of there being a healthy attachment as opposed to like an unhealthy clinging, an unhealthy control.
It's a great way of putting it. Yeah, that attachment is healthy, you know, and that maybe there's some toxic versions of it that need to be cleared up, but not to try to clear up the attachment, you know?
Ram Dass shares of his experience of being at his mother's funeral, in which he was deep in his sadhana and doing regular trips to India, and that was still in his psychedelic days. So he was actually on LSD and just after India and just in a really mystical space at his mother's funeral. And he was with her a lot during her dying process and just going deep into soul to soul, into pure awareness. And there he is at his mother's funeral, where, you know, the show business of a funeral is you're all in black and you got the sunglasses on and you're covering your tears and you've got the tough lip, and typically that was what he was describing as the norm. And there he is lined up with his family, and he's blissed out. He's smiling and laughing and connecting to his mother's spirit, to pure source. And it was really beautiful, him describing a kind of predicament, a kind of paradox of like, holy shit, like everyone's looking at me like I'm dressed in white, blissed out.
Celebrating.
Yet there's a kind of norm of how you're meant to react. And that, to many, would look insane to be blissed out at your own mother's funeral. Yet he'd done the mourning, he'd done the work, he was preparing for death before, he was holding her hand through the whole process and constant meditation. And then, like, let's celebrate, which is a very Eastern way. Like that's kind of the norm. If you go to India, that's like that, what we've been talking about. It's a beautiful, you can't wait for death. And everyone's taking the pilgrimage to Varanasi, or if they're lucky enough, so to speak, to die consciously, to die at this holy spot, which can be anywhere, but that's deeply in their culture, to try to get to this specific place to to be burnt at the burning docks and to die consciously, and it's a celebration. So I wonder, these conversations are the start of it. It's very new in our culture to even just have that kind of conversation that you're bringing to the table, the art of dying, and then to take it beyond our walls into general conversation. It's a sticky subject, and it can be very, very scary to face at first.
I think it's kind of almost 50-50 with people who are open to receiving that kind of joy on the deathbed. You know, someone's dying right there, and to be like, hey, you know, like, don't cry, you know, don't bring your weird shit near this dying person. Bring your celebration, celebrate their life, bring your highest energy. You don't want to be bringing the energy low, bring it up, you know, offer them this opportunity. And, you know, some people are actually open. It makes sense. That, you know, thick, you know, societal lens that's being placed on top it's just a veil. People are actually, they innately know, you know, you don't want to be taking people down. That actually people don't want. Who wants you to be mourning and crying and weeping and holding their feet and pulling them back to earth?
Hold on.
Yeah, who wants that near? No, don't you want to actually give them some elevated energy, some nice music, some nice smells, you know, laughing, you know, touching their heart? It kind of, people intuit those kinds of things. It's, I think human beings really intuit the difference between a toxic and a harmonious and sattvic or uplifting kind of energy. So people are open to it. But,
totally.
But the conversation is, just budding, I think.
And preparation in our own consciousness most likely would be helpful. I mean, if our only mode of identification and perceiving and operating is only on this plane of duality and form and attachment, it's going to be pretty tricky to authentically relax into a celebration of dying into spirit. Got to have faith and got to deepen that connection to that realm of nothingness, of silence, of death. Yeah. Otherwise, it probably is just going to be a contrived kind of trying to hold it together for him, trying to be positive, trying to. So once again, that center, it seems pretty valuable of like not denying the mourning, not denying the sadness, because it's freaking sad. It's really sad, and it hurts. Loving someone so deeply. And to be honest with that, and to like, when someone really lets themselves cry and really lets themselves mourn, but pays attention to that and then drops into the bliss on the other side, it's the most beautiful release. Yeah. So I feel that mourning and the very normal negative reaction around death is actually okay, but the tools to like bring it into other dimensions of being feels like a really balanced, authentic way to not just put on a strong mask and hold it together, but to like relax with them through the process. So valuable, so beautiful.
Yeah, what an amazing process. Well, my favorite thing in the world is meditation. So everything you've just described is just the most interesting, best. Like, you know, Jared's grandmother passed away last in March, and she was passing on my birthday, and everyone was like, no, you don't want to spend your birthday, like, you know, just with this unconscious woman. I was like, this is the best, this is the most fun thing I could possibly want to do. Like, let's go there, let's take some music, she was, you know, highly Catholic, let's take some prayers for her and read them to her and just feel this alchemy and this shifting and this deepening and in that space, you know, it was incredible, you know, and I didn't have the joy of when she totally passed over, but Jared was there and he just said it was one of the most important moments of his life, you know, verifying like, oh yeah, there's a practice to be had. And yeah, like you said, the only real preparation we can make is practicing detachment. In our life, that's what death is. It's a detachment. Don't practice anything else. Practice detachment. And about, you know, if you have the tools to turn your mourning into that meditative act, and it's not going to be pretty or anything, but it's going to be deep, and it's going to be essential, and it's going to be conscious. If you don't have those tools, then get out of the room. You don't want to be that room space, that it's, this vortex upon which the soul is going to leave into another dimension. A 100-year-old soul is going to just lift, into the next reality. Get out of that room if you're going to be making some weird stuff into that.
Right.
And that's why, the whole death process is far from what we would really want, with, maybe like a TV on, or like a nurse who doesn't give a shit, or, that's mean to say, I don't really know if there is a nurse that exists like that could do that in someone's dying room. But yeah, it's definitely something you need to learn about.
Yeah.
There's a lot of things that you would not know about, in this kind of Tibetan context, that are just mind-blowing, make a lot of sense, and are just super practical, just thinking about Udana Vayu and activating Udana, not activating Apana Vayu, not touching the feet, working on Vishuddha chakra, bringing the energy up, working on the crown chakra, so that eventually this is where the energy is when the soul passes on. That's going to determine the resonance of the consciousness that passes on. And yeah, there's just a lot of other stuff out there. Like when you learn meditation or yoga for the first time, you're like, whoa, there's a whole technology here. And the Tibetans obviously have worked on it a lot.
Is the Tibetan Book of the Dead
a part of it? Absolutely. Yeah.
Just like taking off a tight shoe, a really, really tight shoe.
Getting a foot rub.
Yeah. Yeah, beautiful. And thank you for bringing that to the table, to the conversation. Yeah. Another great source that you can get online is Ram Dass and Mirabai Bush's new book / audio book called Walking Each Other Home, which is all about preparing for our own death and being prepared for our loved one and their death. And working with those attachments. So yeah, listeners, if you're curious about deepening your tools of the art of dying here, check out, when is the date of that workshop?
It's in December. So December 2018, yeah.
And your talk on what is yoga,
it's
that
this
is
Sunday.
This coming Sunday.
I don't know if you'll have this released by then.
Probably not.
Yeah.
But I'll remind everyone anyway.
It'll be, I'll probably record it so
Yeah.
they can find it on our website.
Cool.
Yeah.
Is there anything else you want to bring to attention to the listeners? Any further upcoming workshops or anything you want to?
Well, yeah, the thing that I offer and take most pride and love and is my passion the most is definitely silent retreats. So that's just ongoing for the rest of my life, whether I have people coming or a space to do it or not. That's what's going on. So I hold 7-day silent retreats in Margaret River here in Western Australia, as well as in Bali and in India. So you can definitely check the website and if a silent retreat is interesting. And I always tell people that, after a silent retreat, you know how to meditate. There's no question about where you go, how to do it, and all the ins and outs of it. Your consciousness knows. It's processed the meditation practice deeply. So that's one of my favorite ways to teach meditation as well, is in an intensive environment. It's one of those ways that you put in a lot of effort and then you do get a benefit at the end. And we're all, I'm always debating this more Advaita approach where it's like, don't push so hard. But in that context, you're totally out of your comfort zone. Everything's a struggle. Getting your ass kicked by your own mind, by your own body I'm not really selling it, but for the first 3 days only. But,
people learn to appreciate it.
Oh, I think of course.
It's so confronting if you haven't sat with yourself.
Yeah, this is true because a lot of our students come and they're in ecstasy from day one.
Right.
And then they just take short vacations into pain and trauma, very short. And the whole time they're more blissed out than me.
Right.
And we actually get a lot of that. So I think when I first started to do silent retreat, practicing with a teacher, I was also enjoying it very much, but it was very hard. It wasn't changing for the group's need. In the retreats that we do now, there's yin every evening. It's like, actually, that's going to benefit us. That's going to take us deeper, and we don't really need to suffer through it. So Vipassana, it's almost synonymous with suffering. It's basically transmuting suffering. So not letting your body go into deep pain and transmuting that. Yeah. So the retreats that we do, it's like trying to actually have ease, but to push yourself to get there is definitely, it's very hard to support people in their life. Their life might not support it. Their relationships might not support it. Their finances and their holiday hours might not support them to be able to come there. So that's where the real big push is. But usually when you get there, you're welcomed into the flow,
Beautiful. A reoccurring thing I do hear from newer students and even students that have been studying for a while and practicing for a while is a feeling, probably in their own attention, a feeling of one-upmanship and competition, a feeling of like, okay, everyone's meditating, picking up on that bliss that you were talking about, everyone's blissing out, and then they're maybe not blissing out and feeling like, holy shit, like everyone's blissing out, everyone's in deep meditation, I got to be in meditation. And it'd be nice to just speak to that experience, because I think that can be a real aversion and fear of like, holy shit, everyone's so holy and everyone's so tranquil and everyone's so beautiful and peaceful, and here I am just thinking. And I think that attempt to just focus the mind into deep meditation straight away can really freak people out as well. So do you ever witness that kind of polarity of like, holy shit, like people are blissing out, people are quietening down, and then, how uncomfortable that experience is for that chunk of people or whatever,
Yeah, this is, totally part of the meditation retreat. It's something I speak to almost every single meditation session, is the fact that every single person is thinking. Everyone's thinking like crazy, but it's just the mind unraveling. You've provided it the space here. It's just unraveling. The reason that some of us are more advanced and some of us are more happy and some of us are more blissful is those people don't care. They don't care that the mind is unraveling, and they don't take it as a value judgment upon themselves that my meditation isn't good. But at the same time, I hold space for that in such a happy, joyful way for people to just be getting tormented by their minds. I'm so happy because I'm glad they're doing it here in my presence. Like, go for it. Let your mind just torment you, because it will exhaust itself. We're here for 7 days. Your mind will exhaust itself. You will peek into the joy of your meditation and of your being countless times, amongst maybe the scales are tipped a little bit towards the mind is just kind of going around and round and round. It's not tormenting you like, thinking, really, really terrible things, because you kind of just like, you're like, oh, I'm in meditation space, I don't want to be thinking that. So you don't really allow it. But it's tormenting you because it's not doing what you want it to do. It's not listening to your little rules about what you think meditation should look like. That's tormenting you. And that it's got to happen. You can't skip that part. You have to really feel for yourself what it's like to feel that to its depth of suffering and to overcome it. And I'm like, well, that's part of the process. Do it here, and do it here in the support of so many people who have done that, who have had their mind just go and go and go, and them judge and judge and judge, and then eventually be like, I've lived that part of the human experience. I can move on. There's not much you can do. It's just got to happen. And I'm like, well, do it, and you get a break in half an hour. So I don't mind people going through that real struggle. I think for me it was part of my experience. So. And I know a lot of people have come out the other side, so I have faith in that process. Yeah, I think once again, coming to our acculturation, our socialization, most of us just aren't prepared to face those struggles consciously. We look at the struggle as a bad thing, and we can, in our culture, map out a week, a day that we're favoring the comfort zone, the positive experience, and
kind of the ignorance is bliss, kind of sweeping under the rug, the discomfort. So yeah, learning to sit with those discomforts and the battle of the mind and turn that poison into nectar. Let the suffering and the struggle be grace, because it is. 100%. Nearly every seeker will admit, like, the blessing of their depression they went through, or the blessing of an injury they were dealing with, or a blessing of an illness. And often it isn't until down the track in retrospect where we can see that struggle, that suffering was such a valuable part of my life. But to be able to sit with it at the time and maybe shorten the gap of, like, the blessing in disguise getting revealed 10 or 20 years down the track, getting revealed like now. Moment. Yeah. And
I think that's the whole tantric practice, is that transmutation of that energy. And the silent retreats are heavily based on a Kashmiri Shaivism philosophy about the transmutation of energy and about spanda, so about the vibration that is at the root of everything. And even though some of it is quite like high thinking, and high understanding about, this nature of everything as consciousness, vibration. And some people come into the retreat as total beginners. It's just nonstop, just a broken record of me just saying, like, that is a vibration. And it just starts to reorganize the consciousness. So side by side with you experiencing a high energy experience, you're being told some things about what that higher energy experience is. And both of them are brand new to you. So they get assembled into your consciousness. Outside of your normal life context really quickly. And for a lot of times it just assimilates and an experience happens, verifying it, and just starts to spiral deeper. And more suffering, the better. Just bring that suffering. Get that nectar flowing.
Yeah, and it's a beautiful experience to be doing that transformation in group, in Sangha.
Absolutely.
Rather than just in our own practice, in our own four walls, which is good. But to do that in group, you feed off each other's energy, and there's a transmission of the shift, and it definitely amplifies the experience. And to do that for consecutive days, for a week, it's a powerful opportunity.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I have so much faith in it. So much that it's changed my life. It's transformed me. In the end, I'm looking for, like, what has actually provided transformation, not just a belief system that I can explain really well, not just an intellectual piecing together of, like, oh yeah, that makes sense. What has actually transformed me so that I don't have fears, I don't have addictions, in the way that I used to. And what has also actually brought liberation? What can I attribute the transformative aspects of my practice and the liberative aspects of my practice to? And it's silent meditation retreat, 100%. And also the yoga practice, I'm like, in the end, I'm like, what is yoga all the time? Something I have no idea how to describe it. Is it, a breath, a movement practice? Is it, Sanskrit names? Is it, like, what is it? Is it just an exercise physiology? But in the end, it's a movement, breath and energy, mindful movement practice, with meditation awareness. And then also, a consciousness philosophy to back it and to deepen it. And then, of course, a perspective about how it's all relative in the end.
Yeah. Should we leave it off there?
Yeah, that's the one.
That's the one. That's a great place to leave it off. Thank you so much, Ava. Great to chat with you. Great to pick your mind and your heart and all the beautiful stuff you're doing. You're a gem in the community. Everyone, check out Ava's work. I'll leave links down below. Much love.
Thanks so much, Stu.
Bye, everyone.
To be here. Bye.